Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how can you build real-time communication in any of your Python app using Flask and Socket IO. So whenever you're trying to build a website using Python, if you want to build a real-time communication for some chat functionality or anything like that, you can follow these steps and you'll be able to build the real-time communication within your application. So let's get started. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover everything from setting up Flask, a micro framework, web framework for Python, to integrating Socket.io for real-time bidirectional communication between web clients and servers. By the end of this video, you'll get full knowledge of how can you implement the real-time application so that you can customize and add it in your website. So let's get started and implement this functionality. Okay, so without any further ado, let's start coding our project. So if you can see my screen, right now I have VS Code opened. I have just created the folder on my local desktop, named YouTube chat functionality. You can keep the folder name whatever you want. So in this code, we're going to have a server file. We will need JavaScript to integrate the communication between the client and server. And then we also need some template HTML and CSS code. So now look, see, if you are trying to build some practical website, you will need much more suitable code for HTML and CSS. But the main motto of this tutorial is to show you guys how can you implement it in the backend, how the real-time communication actually works. So for that, I just have some template, very basic HTML and CSS code. I'm just in my you can find it anywhere online as well. So for now, I'm going to first of all create a server file, which is going to be very basic again, called app.py. So here's the app.py. Now, before you start coding anything, you'll just have to make sure that you have Flask and Socket.io installed in your local already. So if you don't have it, you can just do pip install Flask and pip install Socket.io. Once you do that, I think you'll be good to go, and you'll have all the dependencies installed in your computer. So right now I have it, so I'm not going to waste time doing it again. You can just type pip install Flask and pip install Socket.io if in case you don't have it installed in yours. Okay, so now I already have Flask in me. I already have Flask in my laptop, so I'm just going to type in from Flask import Flask and send from Flask and then render template. So I have imported Flask from its library, and I've also imported render template from Flask. So what render template basically do, whenever we are creating a web pages, if we want to display any particular web page on any particular route, then we need render template. For example, let me give an example here. So for example, I have chat.html page here, and I want to implement get chat route, right? Get chat route, and I want something like that whenever get chat route is called, it is going to display chat.html. So how we can do that? We can just create the function for get chat, and then inside the function we can just write render template chat.html. With these simple line of code, you'll be able to display all of the contents on of the HTML page on that particular route. So that was it. From Flask Socket.io, going to import Socket.io and send. So what send function is doing? So let's say there are two users who are connected to the server. So that means there are two clients. So in order to communicate between two clients, or we need send function. So for example, if I am chatting with my friend, I need send function to be implemented in Socket.io so that whatever messages I'm writing, you should be able to see it So he should be able to see it on his end. So that's the motto of send. So that's how send works. Okay. Now now we will just initialize our Flask app here. So that is going to be app and then Flask name. All right. And then we will write socket IO is equals to socket IO app. Okay. Now at app route, we will need to create a one route here, and that is going to be the basic route. So the basic route means a home URL. So whenever we are running the server, that is the main page. That is the main and first page which will be loaded on the on server. So now inside that, I'm going to create a chat function, as I said, and I want to just display chat.html. I'm going to create chat.html soon, but for now we can work around like this. Okay, so now I need the socket io.on, this function which will be responsible for the communication of messages. So here's how we can create it. Now, okay, so we are going to create a function now, which will be def and message, and then we are going to pass the parameters into it. What are the parameters? Obviously, the parameters here in this function is going to be message that TUI is sending, right? And then inside that, I would want to print it because we are just doing it for the testing purposes here. Print and then message and then MSG. Okay, perfect. Now, once we have that, we are going to click on send and then MSG broadcast is equals to 2. Okay, so with the send function, uh, all of the connected clients will get the message that we are typing, right? And also we need to config the app over here. So we can just write app dot config, app dot config. And now the last thing that we need to do in the server is we need to set the main function. So if name is equals to main, then simply just to socket io dot run, socket io dot run app, and then debug is equals to true. Okay, so we are using socket io to run our app. So basically, we are just going to use socket io dot run app debug is equals to true. Okay, perfect. Now we need to create a static folder here. Inside the static folder, uh, inside this static folder, we will need JavaScript. So we will need JavaScript files here, and we will also need CSS file here. So now keep a note of this, that JavaScript here in this particular functionality is going to be very important and it's going to play a huge role. Okay, so first of all, let's start adding it or adding all the elements one by one. But how are you going to add it? We will need a event listener for a document, which will run the provided function when the DOM is fully loaded. So what do I mean by that is whenever we are running a server, whenever we're trying to access any page, once the page is completely loaded, to then it will start to uh, implementing all the JavaScript that we have added. So now all of these things happens within a fraction of seconds. So we would not be able to determine it in the real time, but it is very important for us to add that. Okay. So document dot event listener and then we would need DOM content loaded, and then we need this one. Okay, and that is good. Okay, perfect. And now we will start adding all the things one by one. So one first thing will be const socket is equals to IO, and that is going to be very helpful, not very helpful, that is going to be the thing which will establish a WebSocket connection to the server using socket IO. Okay, perfect. Now, next thing we need is const input is equals to document dot get element by ID, and that ID would be message. So whatever message we're typing in, we would need our JavaScript to retrieve that message with the help of ID. So whenever we are appending any message, it is going to create ID, and then whenever we want to access that input, we would need to have that ID, and with the help of ID, we will retrieve the message. Okay. Now the next thing is messages. Now this is something which we will do to display all the messages that has been typed already, right? So that would be again the message. Okay. Just make sure you add a semicolon here just to make sure everything is correct. Okay. Now the next thing we need here is send button. So send button is basically going to send the messages. So send button is equals to document dot get element by ID, and then we will write send button. Okay, perfect. And then we're going to need a form. We are not really using a form in this code, but generally it is a good practice to use a form whenever you're trying to make a chat application. But as you guys know that this is just a demonstration, so we don't really need to create a form, but I'm just adding it for the sake of simplicity and for the references as well. Now form.event listener, whenever somebody would submit the form, and then E. Okay, now so now we need to add a prevent default. What prevent default is going to do is that uh, it would not go for reloading every time we submit something. Every time we submit form, the web page should not go on reload. It should stay like that. So that's why we would need to add this line of code. Okay. Now the next thing would be if input dot value and socket dot send input dot value. So this line of code means that if message exists, then just send the message. And then once our message is sent, we would need our text box to be empty again. For example, you're messaging on WhatsApp. Once you have sent one message, you would need to send one more message. In order to send one more message, the first message should be emptied. So this is going to do that. Okay. Now the last thing that we need to do is we need to add a socket.on. That is going to be the event listener for message event. MSG, then this. Again, we need a semicolon here. And then once you have that, we need to create a list element. Why? Because whatever messages we are seeing, we need to store them into the list so that we can see the history of the messages. Okay, so we can write li, then that is all. Okay, now we have to make sure that whatever the content is, we are appending that into our message. So in this way, we are setting the text content of the list item to the received message. Okay, so now messages dot append child. So whatever message we have, we're going to append that into this into the list. Okay, so I think this was uh, everything about the JavaScript. If you can see that, yeah, this was everything about the JavaScript. If I'll go through each thing one by one. So first of all, we need to add an event listener for document. That is going to be our the main event listener, which means it will only implement all of this once the content is fully loaded. Then we are actually initializing everything and we are retrieving everything. And once everything is done, we are setting up the event listener for a socket message communication, which is going to be stored in the list item. Once we have that, we are just going to append the messages into the item. Okay. So now in the style.css, as I said, I just have some template code that I'm going to copy paste. This is just the basic CSS code. And then I'll go and create one more folder. I'll go and create a one more folder here, which will be templates. And whenever we want to store any web pages, we will do it in this templates folder. Inside templates folder, I'm just going to create a file called chat.html. And I also have that code here in my local. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So see, I am just simply doing nothing in this HTML code. It's just a boilerplate code. You can see it is just referencing to the style.css that we have in static folder. And just make sure that whenever you're adding a script, you reference it to the socket.io.js, and you also reference it to the script.js that we have just created, inside our static folder. Okay, so that was all for the code. Now let's go ahead and run our code and see what we're getting. Okay, so I'm just going to do Python app.py, and as you can see that server is up and running. I have it opened in my browser window here. Let me just drag it here. So see, I have created two windows here. So one window, so both are the clients. Now if I type hello here, you can see that is hello is printed, or hello is displayed over here on the other side. And if I say to the finish, it is so now everywhere it is getting displayed. Okay, so this means that whenever we have two clients created, it is going to be connected to each other, and there is some real-time communication happening between each other, such so that whenever we are typing message in one, it is displayed in the other one. So now if we want to implement this in a real life websites or anything like that, what we can do is that we can create a session tokens. We can create authorizations, and we can store all the information into the database. We can create a usernames. So user A and user B will be connected. If I send user A the message, user B will be able to see it. If I send user message from user B, user A will be able to see it. So that's how you can create the application. This was the basic idea of how things work into the world of Socket.io. And yes, this was everything. And thank you so much for watching the video. And yeah.